Well, so much for that little bit of momentum that was generated from the 2 wins in a row last week. The Penguins have now lost a couple in a row and are one of the worst teams in the league over the past month or so. They are now, let me take a look at that, 5-8-1 after losing 5-1 to Edmonton tonight at PPG Paints Arena. Just a discouraging performance, a deflating performance for the Pens, for sure, with just one game left before the start of the playoffs. Yes, they're in the playoffs. Could be worse, right? We've got 16 consecutive playoff berths here in Pittsburgh to talk about, and we've enjoyed each and every one of them, even though some have ended shorter than we've liked, especially lately. Not trending well right now, and I do want to discuss what is the reasoning behind the fact that the Pens have trailed off late in seasons lately, and it's looking like a trend right now, whether it be regular season or playoffs. And also, I want to talk about guys like Jeff Carter, guys like Kasperi Kapanen, who just aren't pulling their weight. I know it's weird to say that after Jeff Carter scores a goal, but the puck essentially bounced right to him at the doorstep at the end of a power play. Nothing he did except for finish it. I guess he could have missed it. He could have somehow whiffed on it from the doorstep. But any player you put Jeff Carter with right now, as one of my former guests, Ryan Wilson, tweeted during the game, is tanking in terms of shot attempts for and against. So there are plenty of guys not doing enough. And, well, there's another guy who's in the trainer's room way too much. Jason Zucker being evaluated for a lower body injury. And he left the game very early on. So that didn't help. The Penguins shuffled their lines before this game, and I didn't care for the combinations. Brock McGinn with Evgeny Malkin. I don't think so. Ricard Raquel, who's playing so well on Sidney Crosby's right side, he was with Malkin, and I don't think it was a coincidence that it was Raquel's quietest game in a long time, maybe his quietest game as a Penguin since he arrived at the trade deadline. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep into it before I let you know this is Pittsburgh Postgame, and my name is Matt Gajtka. You can find me on social media. I've gotten a lot of tweets from folks tonight, so I have plenty of input on tonight's game. Yeah, games like this one tend to bring out the frustration, and I totally get it. It was a difficult one to watch. I was looking forward to seeing a showdown here between the Penguins and the Oilers, two teams that, as of about a month ago, I thought were in different directions, going in different directions. The Penguins were still riding high and had just picked up Ricard Raquel at the deadline, thought it was a good move, and the Oilers were still trying to find their way under their new head coach, Jay Woodcroft. Well, the Oilers have found their way. And they are rolling. They're looking pretty darn good right now. I thought it was going to be all Calgary in that bracket out west, but, well, the Oilers could be figuring things out just in the nick of time, and it would be good for the sport if the Oilers did figure things out in the playoffs and make a decent run, at least get back to the conference final and give Connor McDavid some run here with a new TV deal and all, in front of some new eyeballs perhaps. And, well, you saw tonight with your own eyeballs what number 97 can do. How about 7 points in the season series, the two-game season series against the Pens? The Oilers beat the Penguins in regulation twice this year. That's the first time they have had any regulation wins against Pittsburgh since 2006, the Michel Therrien soft rant. You might remember that game. I think you probably do if you're a Penguins fan of any kind of vintage. Early comments on the live chat. Yes, you can chat with me right now. I'll do my best to respond to each and every one of them, if they're not abusive, that is. Could be that type of a night. Walt Flanagan says, they are, have been, and will continue to be a sham of a team. They are a joke. Walt is rolling. He's got 5 comments up here already. Bunch of pretenders for years. I have honestly stopped watching. Cannot recall the last game I watched. I know you're a positive guy. I am not about this team. I had a screenshot of a headline from 2019, Rutherford, things will change. Well, things did change. Jim Rutherford did leave town. And it's left to Ron Hextall and Brian Burke. And I don't think they've done a bad job necessarily, but it could just be we're at the end of the line. I look at perhaps age as a factor here. When you're talking about a team right now that has its top 3 centers, all, 34 or maybe 35 and above. I forget how old Sid is. Let me add up the numbers. No, he's still 34 until August. It helps when his birth year is on his back. But Crosby, Malkin, and Jeff Carter, what is he, 36, 37? So perhaps that's just it. The driving force of the team and Chris Letang, your most important defenseman, I think still operating at a high level, but maybe not at an elite level anymore. And as of right now, the goaltending is a question mark. So it just was interesting. And we've seen it a few times now in the past few years. The years that Walt mentioned he felt they've been pretenders for a while. I thought they've put together in recent seasons, in each of the last, 3 seasons, 2018-19, they were not very good. But 2019-20, they had it rolling, and then they started to lose right before the COVID break. And they had it rolling for a while there, in fact, in 2019-20. Same deal last year to a lesser degree. And then this year, middle of the season, once they got Crosby back, it looked like a team that was ready to go and looked like a team that was rejuvenated and that was playing well. But is it Mike Sullivan's system? Is it too hard to do for long term if you're not a team that has a ton of young legs? I'm wondering about that, because if the Penguins are a team that needs to be at max effort all the time, or I shouldn't say effort, because maybe a guy like Carter is trying hard, but it could be the fact that he's out of gas, or at least a little bit leg weary at this point of the season. And if you do have enough of that through enough of the roster, then the type of high-pressure forward-checking game that Sullivan wants the Penguins to play may not be as effective. Walt Flanagan says, got to disagree on Hextall. Not a huge fan so far. The team badly needed a backup goalie all season. Okay, I'll give you that. And that was, the time to do that was in the summertime. I don't like shopping for goalies during the season, but they could have picked up a guy. They could have done it actually 2 years running. The first year was Rutherford's fault. I was really confused why they didn't bring in somebody last year, with DeSmith having basically no experience at the NHL level, and of course Matt Murray moving on. This year, I guess it made a little more sense because both Jarry and DeSmith had plenty of action in the shortened COVID season. But hey, you're right. There is no veteran backup here to perhaps give you more of a better feeling. I don't think DeSmith is a bad goalie. I think he's been fully capable of putting together decent stretches of play, long enough stretches of play that would allow you to think, well, if you're playing well, you could beat a team in a round of the playoffs. I don't know about 2, but I think that DeSmith is not a non-starter in this league in terms of just the conversation of whether he's a viable goalie. I think he is a non-starter, literally. Let me be clear about that. But talking about him like he's an AHL guy, I'm not sure that's the case either. All right, other things from today. I was hoping we'd have more of a real showdown there between Sid and McDavid, but hey, it's McDavid's world right now, and we're all just living in it. As you saw in that goal in the third period, what a beautiful pivot, burst, and just a clinical shot, clinical finish. Everything about that was what you love about hockey. If you love offensive hockey, if you love watching skilled players, then Connor McDavid is certainly at the top of your list. I would imagine so. Another guy up in Toronto is also at the top of your list. Austin Matthews scoring a couple tonight to get to 60. McDavid and Matthews, those are my 2 favorite players to watch right now. I guess Nikita Kucherov is in that class as well in terms of producing offense, but Matthews and McDavid have that physical specimen quality going with them. And in particular, McDavid, he's maybe the best athlete I've ever seen play hockey, to be quite honest. And I think more like him are going to be coming down the pike. Not every year, though. He is certainly a generational talent. And, hey, I had a little smirk when that puck went in off McDavid's stick in the third period because I just appreciate his greatness. Jeff Candlemo says, honest question, how many other coaches on teams with expectations, no matter how good they've been, don't make it out of round 1 4 straight times and keep their job? I guess, Jeff, the kind of coaches who had won consecutive Stanley Cups prior to that. You know what I mean? It's not that I'm saying that Sullivan's not to blame, and not that I'm saying that you're wrong, but I'm saying that's probably why he gets the leeway, right? Is that he's done it before, and he's done it twice, and he's the only coach to pull off that feat in the NHL, dating back to what, before the lockout. So it's nothing to shake off or shrug off, but like I said, maybe just the way that Mike wants this team to play isn't a great fit with the current personnel. Perhaps they would benefit from, I don't want to say slowing it down a bit, but maybe being a little more deliberate, maybe backing off a little bit more, and being more selective as to when they pressure. Not that that's what's the problem here. I looked to the Evander Kane goal. It made it 2-1. I mean, yes, they get beat through the neutral zone, but you know what? It was more of McDavid just beating Brock McGinn straight up, and McDavid's going to beat a lot of guys. So maybe that's not the best example of the system failing them tonight, but a lot of things are piling up, and some guys have gone cold. Brian Rust, that hasn't helped. I don't want to see him back with Crosby, in fact, because I just loved how Raquel was starting to finish. And I think Rust brings out the best in Malkin, so I hope that Sullivan comes back to his senses there and at least shuffles things up in the top 6 one more time before they play Columbus on Friday, and hopefully get the team some good feeling before they go into the playoffs. Evan Rodriguez was carrying things for a while, and the way he shoots the puck, I thought it was at least semi-sustainable, but he's totally fallen off the cliff here, too, when it comes to putting the puck in the net. Now he's on the fourth line again, and he's not going to get many chances to put the puck in the net. So, Kasperi Kapanen just making bone-headed decisions, brain-dead decisions, really, in a lot of cases, and not looking like an NHL player, to be quite honest. So, boy, there's plenty of places you can pin the blame. Brian Dumoulin hasn't been the same, and now he's back with Letang. I realized that Dumoulin and Marino were a bad pairing, but maybe Dumo is due to sit one out. And I know it's a tough time of the year to do that with a guy who you won a couple of cups with, but that's why they pay Mike Sullivan the big bucks, to make those difficult decisions. And Walt says, Mike Sullivan is a damn good coach. Well, he says goof coach. I don't think you thought that. Yes, okay, you corrected yourself. This is entirely on the players. I don't know if I put it entirely on the players. I think Mike's got some weak areas. He's got some weaknesses for veterans in some cases. We saw him play Jack Johnson forever before that that train finally left the station and left town. Thank God. So there are some. Every coach has some deficiencies, right? There is no perfect coach out there. I still think Mike Sullivan's one of the better coaches in the league. Just maybe the way the team is built right now isn't tailored toward his strengths. I don't know. That's where I'm settling right now. Okay, plenty of Twitter comments here, so want to get to those. People were just all over it there in the third period, as you would imagine. I don't want to say it felt like the season died, but it felt like any hope of generating anything positive here in the last week of the regular season went out the window. Even if they beat Columbus on Friday at home, whoop-de-doo, right? This was a true test, and the Penguins failed it. So they've had plenty of those situations lately. Even again, they beat Boston. They wiped them out 4-0 last Thursday. Last time I did one of these shows, they still allowed 52 shots on net, and so even there, they were not airtight by any means, and you could argue lucky to win that one. All right, some comments from Tesnas GV. Hope I pronounced that right on Twitter. Is it bad I'm electing to watch the Pirates over the Pens until the playoffs? Actually, it is very bad. The Pirates aren't trying to win, and it's a scam at PNC Park. So, yes, it is bad you're watching that. At least the Penguins are trying to win. From a management perspective, I suppose you could debate that in some of these games down the stretch here. Let's scroll on down. Jeff Candlemo on Twitter. Hey, Jeff, just saw you there too as well. You said, can't wait for more of the Penguins struggling too, since we've been told you can't change the coach, can't change the roster, can't change anything. Just be happy for the past. I don't think we've been told that unless you're a real dummy saying that. Not you, Jeff. I'm saying if people were saying that to you, then they're idiots, right? Because there's always something to change. When you say can't change the roster, I'm guessing you mean more like letting a big name walk, like a Malkin or a Letang. Now, that would be something different. I think if that happens, then you're basically rebuilding, and I'm not sure there's a point to rebuilding with Sidney Crosby still on the roster. As we've seen this year, Sid is still fully capable of centering a top-class scoring line in this league. You put some good talent next to him, Gensel and Raquel, and they were dominating. That's why I'm even more confused that that line was broken up. Scrivener 1A says, pretty sad team at this point. Awesome Jason says, I had to turn the channel 30 seconds after the Carter goal. And there's Walt Flanagan on Twitter. Every game makes me look less like the raving lunatic on the street corner. Hey, yeah, you've been persistent, Walt. I'll give you that much. And hey, the ends of these seasons, disturbing stuff, to be quite honest. And I thought this year was going to be different. It could still be different, I suppose, if the playoffs go in a positive direction, or at least win one round. That'd be a nice departure from what's happened recently. And by the way, out-of-town scores, the Capitals lost in regulation 4-1 to the Islanders. So the Caps cool off a bit. They stay 1 point behind the Penguins. Also remember, the Penguins hold the tiebreaker against Washington, which is regulation wins, also regulation and overtime wins. So the Pens own the first two tiebreakers against Washington. And so that means the Caps would have to actually be ahead of the Pens to get that third spot in the Metro and get the right to play what looks to be the Rangers, because they lost to the Hurricanes tonight, 4-3. So the Canes set to win the Metro. They may have actually clinched the Metro tonight. Sorry, I don't have that right in front of me. But as far as the upshot on the teams around the Penguins, Rangers lose, so they stay in the 2 spot. No one's going to catch them for the 2 spot in the Metro, and the Penguins remain 1 point ahead of Washington. Florida loses to Boston, but who cares? It's going to be Florida as the top seed, and whoever finishes as that second wild card in the East is going to play Florida. Hey, I'm not really talking about matchups anymore because the Penguins have their own problems to deal with. And like Mike Sullivan told the ESPN broadcast crew earlier today, what matters is how you're playing going into the playoffs. And I wonder if he's thinking about that statement tonight as he sits in the coach's dressing room afterward and wonders where things went wrong this year, because they have certainly gone wrong. And I want to thank Pens historian Bob Grove for this stat. I mentioned at the top of the show that the Penguins are 5-8-1 since that 11-2 win over Detroit. Hey, I was there for that one. Can't blame me for that. Maybe you can blame me for the slump afterward. But in that time frame, since March 27th, that big win over Detroit, the 11 points in the standings are the fewest of any team currently in a playoff position, and fewer than 7 teams currently out of the playoffs. So put it a different way, it's worse than 23 of the 32 NHL teams this recent stretch. Pretty troubling, and it's just piled up, right? There have been moments over this stretch here for the Penguins, which actually dates back a little before that game against Detroit. Not to nitpick Grover there, but I understand that's a pretty clear delineating point here between good and bad when you talk about an 11-2 win. But even before that, you'll recall the Penguins got blown out on the road by the Rangers. They lost also to the Rangers at home. They lost in a shootout to the Sabres. That was in a back-to-back travel situation. But if you go back to, well, we'll call it that game against the Rangers, the Friday, March 25th game, they lost 5-1, were not competitive, dropped to 39, 17, and 10. And since then, just 6 wins. And what is that now? 9 losses and 1 overtime loss. So 6-9-1, I would put that slump at. That's a pretty significant stretch of the season, and not quite as big as the stretch when they were borderline dominant in the middle of the season, but it's getting there now. And we've seen over the years, the research has been done, not necessarily talking wins and losses, but in terms of puck possession and puck, shot metrics, you have to play well pretty much the last 25 games of the season to give yourself a prayer to go deep in the playoffs. Not to say you can't win a round if you're going in slumping, not to say you can't flip a switch, but it's been very exceedingly rare in the salary cap era that a team has been slumping like this, getting outshot, outchanced, and outplayed in the last, quarter of the season, we'll call it, and has gone on to do anything of substance in the playoffs. It basically doesn't happen. So the Penguins have to upend that trend if they have any hope of that. And Walt also saying Mike definitely has some blind spots. Mike Sullivan he's talking about. I agree. I'm not sure this is entirely about coaching, but I do wonder about attrition. That's all I'm saying. That was my first topic of discussion here today, was maybe it's just the Penguin system that's not melding currently with the amount of talent they have and the variety of talent they have on the roster. Jason Zucker hurt again, like I said, but you know what? The Oilers were missing Darnell Nurse and Jesse Puljujarvi. So everyone's missing somebody at this point of the season. Well, the Penguins weren't until Zucker went down again. And that's 2 times since he came back from the most recent injury. Actually 3 times if you want to count the injury at Minnesota, that he's had to leave a game early. So I don't know what's going on there. He seems like a guy who's in great shape. He's a fast twitch type of athlete, can get from A to B in a hurry. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe he's got a little too much of that going on. I have no idea. I am no physical therapist. I am no doctor. I'll put that out there. Matt loves the Most High. The Baby Pens will make it further in the playoffs than the Pens. Well, I don't think that really makes a difference because the Baby Penguins are playing in the AHL. If they put the NHL Penguins down there, I think they do pretty well. Anyway, so I do know what you mean there, Matt. I'm not trying to make fun of you too much. So anyway, 1 game left. What do you want to see in terms of lines or defense pairings? Do you want to see any kind of experimentation? Do you want to see Louis Domingue back in the net? One of my friends on Twitter recently said, let's just see what Domingue has. I'm thinking I'd rather just give DeSmith a run of starts and let him get into a rhythm after a year of being a backup. I'm just not sure that Domingue is going to give you any kind of real chance. But, hey, maybe he's better than DeSmith. I have no idea. But what I want to see is at least put Raquel back on the first line with Crosby. You got to have at least one line clicking. I know that Sullivan and most coaches, all coaches, I guess, want to spread the wealth offensively and give their team a chance to create something, generate something, play in the other team's end. 3 out of 4 shifts over the boards, but maybe that's just not realistic with this team right now. They were pretty top-heavy in 2017, the Penguins were. Their top 2 lines. It wasn't like 2016 when the HBK was getting huge minutes and delivering. So it's not like it's impossible. And with the way the Penguins are built, maybe it's just prudent to load up on the top 2 lines and say forget about that 3rd and 4th line in terms of pushing top 6 talent down the board. All right, back to Twitter. Clem014 says they either don't care enough to try or they are so out of shape they can't. I don't know if they're so out of shape, but it just takes 1 or 2 half steps behind in the NHL to make you look foolish. Like we saw tonight against a team like the Oilers, they are primed to make you look foolish if you're not absolutely on top of your game. Toys XL Die R Mikey on Twitter. I'll go with the name instead of the handle. He says the quicker they lose in the first round, the faster you can get to watch good hockey from Carolina, the Avs, and Florida. Hey, I'm going to be watching that anyway. The Pens are a bug to an 18-wheeler right now for good teams. I'm not going to make any cases for the Penguins winning the first round, certainly. I don't want to go overboard and say they suck, because they don't suck. They are still capable in at least, short stretches of games to look like the team that we saw earlier in the season. I understand that doesn't get it done. Short stretches does not get it done. Fred Nash, PGH, says pretty crazy the collapse this last quarter of the season. Maybe we're the crazy ones for expecting them to continue to keep that level up all the way through the season at their age, especially. This is the second oldest team in the NHL, I believe. I want to say only the Capitals are older. And much like the Capitals, cough, cough, Ovi, Backstrom, they have plenty of players. The Penguins do. Actually, they have more players than the Capitals who are their key cogs that are in their mid-30s. At some point, it's going to catch up. Hey, I'm 37, so I can say that. Even though they're still just youngsters to me, just barely. I think that's about it as far as the comments are concerned tonight on Twitter. And thanks to all of you who did tweet, because it makes it a lot easier to get through a game like this. Tough to see a guy like Evander Kane score against you as well. Not a huge fan of his, as many in the league and many fans around the league can probably agree with that, and his estranged wife could definitely agree with that statement. But, boy, it's tough to root against Connor McDavid. It really is. I hope that he can make a decent run. I hope he and Leon Draisaitl can show off what they can do, because it is a fun team, and I was really disappointed to see the Oilers slumping as bad as they did in the mid part of the season. But I was happy they fired Dave Tippett. It just didn't seem to be working there. Wasn't getting the commitment there. Maybe it was a system thing too as well. But according to Jay Woodcroft, who took over, it really wasn't. He just asked for more commitment to the defensive end. And hey, it's working right now. Maybe a little bit better goaltending. That could also go hand in hand with increased defensive commitment. And, well, McDavid's 25. Draisaitl's, 26, 27. Honestly, they're in their prime, their hockey prime right now. So it's time to get it done. By this point in their careers, the Penguins, Crosby and Malkin and Letang had already claimed 1 Stanley Cup and already been to another final. So the Oilers, who haven't been to a final yet, have only made that 1 decent run in 2017, so it's been a while. This is 5 years now. Time for them to shit or get off the pot, as the expression goes. And for the Penguins, maybe one last time before they have to flush this whole thing, if I may stretch that absolutely painful metaphor. Hey, when you watch a game like that, you watch an ending like that. That third period was sad, wasn't it? Can you blame me for going to the toilet humor? That's what disappointed me the most, in fact. I was thinking, okay, on home ice, the Pens are going to have a push here. And by the way, news coming in, Matt Vensel of the PG, Pittsburgh Postgame, among others, saying that Zucker's lower body injury is still being evaluated, per Mike Sullivan. So there you have that before I go off the air. But this third period reminded me of the third period against Washington a couple of weeks ago. Remember that one? Also a national television game. So the Pens haven't draped themselves in glory in front of the big audiences lately either. Not that it matters, but add another indignity to this recent stretch. But that game against the Caps, the Pens came out, what was it, a tie game or maybe just down 1? Looking pretty decent through 2 periods at any rate against a team they're directly competing against in the Metro standings and the Eastern Conference standings. And then the Caps essentially dominated that third period. same deal here. The Oilers were all over the Penguins. The Pens had maybe one decent chance when it was still 2-1. Then Zach Hyman scores in the power play. Then the Oilers get another power play. The Pens kill that one. Then the Oilers get another power play because they have the puck for the entire opening 10 minutes of that third period. And McDavid scores, and that's all she wrote. So I think that's the most concerning thing because every team usually has a push. No team gets held down completely when they're just trailing by a couple of goals, or in this case, just one goal entering the third period. It's called score effects. Teams generally sit back with a lead, and teams who are trailing push players ahead, and that typically leads to at least a short-term sugar rush. Not even the sugar rush today. Maybe they should have gone to something stronger. Maybe a little caffeine, maybe a little coffee between periods would have been good. Maybe I shouldn't even say that. I'm trying to give up coffee myself. Today is my first caffeine-free day. I'm actually surprised how well I'm hanging in there at 10 o'clock. Maybe it was all in my head, that addiction, hoping it's not that much of a physical withdrawal and more of just a mental thing. And talking with you guys, even after a 5-1 Penguins loss to Edmonton, this certainly helps out too. Matt back to comment as well. Not me, Matt, but Matt Loves the Most High on our live chat here on YouTube. He says, how much blame do you put on the underwhelming defense? Overhaul next season, maybe for the blue line. I said this last year too, Matt. I'm glad you brought that up. The Penguins didn't have anybody outside of Letang and I guess Matheson. And Matheson has taken a step this year, so him accepted. But the Penguins don't have a lot of guys who can contribute at the offensive end repeatedly. And if you watch other teams, watch the best teams in the NHL, the D is chipping in a lot. And not to say it's positionless hockey. It's not like total football, like the Dutch national team back in the day in the soccer world, for those of you who are soccer fans. It's not that much like soccer yet. But we're seeing more and more defenders who are basically rovers. And Chris Letang was a little bit ahead of his time in that regard too. But you're seeing it around the league. And I'm not saying you need 5 or 6 guys to do that, but you need some players who can give you a little more. And I think the way to defend, this has been the case in the NHL for many years now, the way to defend best is to play in the offensive end. And the Penguins have a couple too many guys on the blue line who are just more comfortable defending and then chipping the puck up and watching. Maybe that worked in 2017 with the forward core a little bit younger, a little more dynamic. I don't think it works that much anymore. I think the Penguins need more from the back end, but maybe players like John Marino and Marcus Pettersson don't have it in them. I know Chad Ruhwedel has scored a few goals this year, but I don't want to say he's a stay-at-home guy, but Ruhwedel's not really the problem. I think it's more guys like Pettersson and Marino who just don't ever get involved on the attack. Ruhwedel is what he is. He's a 6th defenseman, maybe a 7th defenseman, a little bit of offensive upside. Generally plays pretty smart, even though he's a smaller guy and pretty physically limited in that way, not the fastest skater either. And you see him get burned occasionally just because he's not the biggest specimen on the ice, certainly. So I don't want to pin it on him as much, but it's that middle part of the defense that needs to be better. And I forget who tweeted it tonight. It might have been Mad Chad or somebody, but saying that this team needs to find another top 4 defender in the offseason. Forget wingers. And I think I'm inclined to go that way if you're going to try to maximize the end of the Crosby era. And who knows where it goes, right? If this trend continues and they go out with a whimper in the playoffs, then maybe we're already at the end of the Crosby, Malkin, Letang era, or at least the Crosby, Malkin era, or the Crosby, Letang era. I'm not sure how you want to group that, and there's still a long way to go in this season. Hopefully, there's a longer way to go than we currently feel like there is. But my point being that a lot could happen this summer. This could be a huge summer in terms of the trajectory of the Penguins, good or bad. All right, other out-of-town scores. Maybe that coffee is kicking in, or the lack thereof. Biggest game of the year in the NHL when it comes to playoff implications. The Vegas Golden Knights lead the Dallas Stars 2-1 on the road. Vegas needs a regulation win to give themselves a chance here in the final week of the regular season to sneak by Dallas. So I was toying with the idea of a play-in game last week in one of our post-game discussions. I was saying perhaps 8 versus 9 would be fun in the NHL. Well, we're essentially getting it tonight. It's 8 versus 9 out west, and Vegas trying to avoid a massive disappointment that would be missing the playoffs here after they invest in Jack Eichel, after they put all their eggs in the Robin Lehner basket. That didn't turn out too well, did it? So not to say I told you so, but I did tell you so on that one. But Vegas does lead it, and if they can hold on and win in regulation, they would just be 1 point back of Dallas. They'd still need a lot of help, to be clear, but they would just be 1 point back, and they'd have a chance going into the end of the season. Calgary and Nashville, potential first-round playoff matchup. That's 2-2. And I already mentioned in the East, Boston beats Florida 4-2. Tampa Bay beats Columbus 4-1. The Lightning showing some flashes, if you may pardon the pun, late in this season. They looked like they were tired and exhausted, and they should be tired and exhausted. They played a lot of hockey the last 2 years, and they're not the youngest team in the world either, are they? And they lost some depth guys like a Yanni Gourde, a Blake Coleman. It's been tough to replace them, but I think they've done as good of a job as you could imagine. And, of course, they still have that big man, Vasilevsky, in net. So Tampa's back in it. They're probably going to play Toronto in the first round. Carolina, I mentioned they won in regulation. They have clinched the Metro Division, and the Capitals lose in regulation. So the Penguins stay 1 point up on the Caps for the third spot in the Metro. But again, like I said earlier, I don't think it's really worth it to worry about it. Just, I guess, interesting to say, are they going to play Florida or are they going to play New York? That's what it's going to come down to. And either one is scary for its own reasons. I suppose we can talk about that more on Friday, Lord willing, after the Penguins play the Blue Jackets, 7 o'clock at PPG Paints Arena. Okay, we've reached the half-hour mark. That's all I got in me for this last week of the regular season opener, if you will. 2 games in this final week. Playoffs start 1 week from 1 week from yesterday, May the 2nd. So Monday, that's a new one as well in the NHL. Typically, it's Wednesday, Thursday, the start for most series. Sometimes even Friday, but we've shifted to the middle or the front of the week in this case. I don't know if that has anything to do with the scrambled COVID schedule or what, but just be aware that the playoffs are going to be starting on Monday, potentially Tuesday, I guess maybe even Wednesday for some series. But the Pens are going to be in. They're not looking like they have any kind of positive headway right now as they fall 5-1 to the Oilers, and it was a very deserved victory, very convincing victory for the Oilers, as the Penguins now have one more game left before we can wipe the slate clean, a slate that is looking rather dirty, and move on to the postseason. Thanks again for watching on Pittsburgh Sports Live. You can like and subscribe to know when we're going live. Post-game shows for the Penguins, also the Pirates coming up shortly. Riverhounds, too, have some content from them on the channel, and NFL draft coverage from Mike Ostie and Alan Saunders and crew. Mike Vukovcan as well. Thanks to them for the platform. Thanks to you for watching. I'm Matt Gajtka saying good night. God bless. Talk to you on Friday, final night of the regular season, and then we get set for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Good night.